Well, this is interesting. So Josh Pate, our good buddy, maybe a week and a half ago, tweeted out the GIF of the water shaking in Jurassic Park. When the T-Rex is stepping and the water kind of trembles
right before the lawyer gets eaten off the toilet.
Yes, he tweeted that out, and no, didn't expand on it at all. And it was just like, okay, what the hell does that mean? Well, he does a Q&A on his podcast, and somebody asked, like, hey, can you expand on that and what it has to do with the ACC? And this directly could impact both Oregon and Oregon State. I thought it was interesting. Here's Josh Pate on the demise of the ACC.
I think the ACC is kind of sort of screwed. I think the future of the conference will look radically different than it does now. There are powerful entities that are well motivated and well financially backed that want out. In other words, FSU. And they're not alone. I think they're going to get out. I have acquaintances, shall we say. I have contacts in the legal community. Well, earlier this week when they said, hey, get ready, it's coming, I put the GIF out. I don't know what the timeline is. I just know that this is the kind of person who is not one for hyperbole. Frankly, I don't even think they care about the ramifications over on the college side or the conference realignment side, but they know I do, and they know people like us do. So they threw that at me, and I asked a bunch of questions, and I got some answers I can't share, but the long and short of it is, I think that the reconstruction or reconfiguration of the ACC is pretty imminent. And certainly no action is going to happen before this season, but it wouldn't stun me at all if we heard news on this front before this season starts. And that's, 9 Saturdays away. So, yeah, if that gives you any idea of what kind of timetable we're working on, it wouldn't surprise me at all if we had some breaking news stories or several breaking news stories. And knowing some of the folks that work on those stories, I can wholeheartedly tell you those stories are in the oven as we speak.
Could directly impact both Oregon and Oregon State with maybe new members of the Big Ten and another conference that's looking for new members or, what the hell does the ACC do if they lose multiple? But could be big news on the horizon in the ACC.
Well, the ACC has long been, I think, the conference circled of crappy media deal locked into forever. Clemson, Florida State pissed off. 4 other schools want to join them and get the hell out of there if they can legally do it. Interesting quotes from the commissioner, Jim Phillips. They were in Florida about a week ago, and he had said this. He said, quote, there's going to be a reset in college sports, and it's okay. Doesn't mean it's going to be the end of college sports by any means. It's going to look different, and at the end of the day, the opportunity to provide additional benefits for student athletes is a huge piece of what is going to take place. He basically said, we're going to fight with it every effort that we can. This is on the lawsuits part. What has been agreed upon twice, the grant of rights, deserves to be executed. We have taken that position. He says, we feel good at 18. Mass matters. It just does in today's world. May not have mattered 25 years ago. Quantity and quality matter, and that's what we feel like we've done. So he's encouraging everybody that they're going to be A-okay. And we heard this for a calendar year from all the reporters on the West Coast.
Yes, we did.
This is going to be good. This is going to be just like the Big 12. Apple, ESPN, Fox. Dead.
Yep.
No heartbeat.
Don't worry, you'll get the Big 12 TV deal. They'll get $30 million a school. Everything will be fine.
Swag was on an airplane and sat next to one of the reporters and said, what do you think's going to happen? And they said, quote, it's going to be a hybrid of the Big 12's deal, Apple, ESPN, little bit of Fox. It's going to work out great. That was the direct quote Swag got from one of the West Coast reporters.
Basically a done deal.
This is starting to kind of be the ball rolling in a similar direction to the ACC.
I mean, it's done. The ACC's dead.
Well, ESPN, this is where ESPN's an interesting spot. You could make the other conferences, I think, a little more interesting if you throw certain programs from the ACC into those conferences. But also, you negotiated one of the greatest sports deals in your company's history by locking that conference up for like 14 years at a price that is largely laughed at.
Yeah.
So it's like, what do you do there? You're kind of destroying your own entity, but you're creating more interest in the other entities that makes your business boom.
It's interesting because when I heard this, I was listening to the pod this weekend, and It reminds you of where we were at a year ago for the Pac-12, and we were at this point wondering what's going to happen. When are we going to find out the TV deal? To your point, Swag was hearing from folks, oh, it's going to be fine, and that's all that was being reported. And then we fast forward to whenever it was in August that we found out it's not done, and they're all leaving, and only Oregon State and Washington State are left. This is all heading in the same direction. When powerful schools want out, they're going to find a way to get out.
Well, especially in that conference, the most powerful schools.
Exactly. And so we have talked a lot about this private equity stuff and raising money and all. Even if it costs you $500 million to break that grant of rights, do you think that Florida State doesn't seriously say, okay, we'll take your $500 million in private equity and we're going to go play in the SEC or we're going to go play in the Big Ten? They would do that in a heartbeat. They want nothing to do with that conference anymore. Florida State was undefeated last year and they were left out of the college football playoff. We debated that for weeks on end. A big part of the reason they were left out was one, of course, the Jordan Travis injury, but the other one was the respect that exists for the conference, and it's just not a very good conference. They want out of the ACC desperately. I think the bigger story here for us locally is how great of news this is for Oregon State and Washington State. We all knew that you were going to have to kind of wait for that next domino to fall in the landscape of what is it going to be, and we all assumed it was the ACC, but at the time, a year ago when this was all breaking, we didn't know if that was going to take a year, 2 years, 5 years. Like, how long is the ACC really going to take to collapse? Because to your point, the grant of rights deals till like 2035. It's like 11 years from now. That's a long ways off, so we have to wait all the way until then, or will something happen before that? If you get to a spot where Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, Virginia, and
North Carolina
State, whoever the hell else you want, they all bounce for whether it be SEC or Big Ten invites, or maybe some of them want to go to the Big 12. What the hell does the ACC do? And I do truly think that there's a chance that it impacts what happens with Oregon State and Washington State, because don't forget that Stanford and Cal were the ones that joined that conference on a lesser payout just because they wanted a seat at the Power 5 table. They were desperate to hold on to that, and now they could be looking again saying, wait a minute, we joined you thinking it was a power conference. Now you're not a power. Like, what the hell is this going to look like? So I think there's a direct impact here to both Oregon State and Washington State when this news finally does break.
I mean, I'm always hoping for my alma mater to get into one of those Power 4 conferences. It was weird, by the way, to see Cal redid their court and it says ACC in the paint.
Yeah.
Very odd to see that.
Yeah.
I think if that is to happen, and it won't shock anybody on this show, I think it would just kind of go back to the original conversation we had about the playoff. And I know they've done this big playoff deal and they're excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
But my dread of basically getting to a point where does Miami, UNC, Florida State, Clemson, NC State, do they all find homes in the Big Ten and the SEC? Because if they do, you're just stretching those conferences to an even bigger number, to a point where those conferences could legitimately say, we have the best 10 to 15 teams in college football, the brands that matter the most, quote unquote. We're going to do our own thing. That goes back to our original conversation when USC had left of where is this all going?
Yeah.
And I said my fear was the Big Ten SEC has like their own invitational basically, and deal with it. And they'll still get a lot of eyeballs because those are big brands and diehard fans. That would be my fear if that is to happen. That could still be years out.
Yeah.
But all of this is on the table. It has been the minute Texas, Oklahoma went to the SEC, college football as we once knew it, it died.
Oh, it's dead. It's dead and gone.
But now it's it's evolving and it's changing, and we're watching this and questioning things, and I certainly think we're saying the right things about it. But when that happened, it was like, oh, okay. And then USC, UCLA followed suit. The conference that we all know and love basically died. Here we are, not knowing what the hell the future is, what it means. We're talking trash to Penn State and Maryland. It's all just a big weird thing right now.
It's a new weird world. But Josh Pate, our buddy, is saying that the demise of the ACC is on the horizon, and schools are empowered and they want out. Florida State being the main one, and others are likely going to follow. What does that mean for the ACC, and what do they do? Who the hell knows? But I still maintain I think it impacts Oregon State and Washington State because they're looking for a seat at the table again, and the ACC might be looking for some schools depending on how all this shakes out. So it could be good news for Oregon State and Washington State if that does follow for